All right. Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday to you. Welcome to the live stream. Today we are talking The Lord of the Rings, again, because I am who I am, okay? I make no apologies. But specifically, we're going to be talking about the language in The Lord of the Rings and whether or not it is more difficult as the book goes on. There was a great quote. It's on the thumbnail to this video, but somebody asked the question on Discord about whether there's a spike in difficulty in the Return of the King. And basically, this person was reading through it, and they're like, "Man, this is like getting harder to read as we go." As so, is that just my imagination, or is that something that is real? Well, we're going to dig a little bit into that today. So yeah, let me know as we get started. Hit the what's that thing over there? The chat. Yeah, hit the chat. Let me know what you think about it, what your hypothesis is. We're not going to do an exhaustive study of this subject today, but I thought we would look at a few passages and see what we could find out. So, hello, Lady Sweden. Welcome. I'm really glad you're here because we do it at this time for you. I was thinking about, whether these live streams should be at a different time or, a different day or whatever. And then I just thought, you know what? No, I need Lady Sweden here. So we're doing it. We're doing it now. Doggone it. Anyway, okay. And I see that Josh is happy to say hello to Lady Sweden, but not to me. I see how it is. I see the priorities here. That's fine. See, Tony has got his priorities straight. Welcome, Tony. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Because I don't have a fancy 2-camera setup yet, I do have that capability. I just have to do all the wires and whatnot. So if we want to look at the text, I'm just not set up for it yet. So we're gonna kind of go around that a little bit today, and I'll put the text up on screen, but I'll have to type it out as we go. So you see me way too often at every event. Rarely get to see Lady Sweden. That's fair, I suppose. Hi, is this like a howdy ho neighbor? Welcome, Todd. Okay. So you know what? Before we get started, I am taking this jacket off because it is starting to get a little warmer in here, and I don't need to deal with this. Okay. So, in the meantime, how was everybody's week? Okay. Oh gosh, I'm like struggle bussing over here. Okay. Let's do some textual analysis. First of all, we need to talk about the parts of speech. These are the 8 basic parts of speech. I put these in order of, I think, how often we're going to be using them. Roughly, prepositions and adverbs will, maybe adverbs get used a little more, but in English, prepositional phrases are huge. So there are tons of those. But like pronouns and interjections, we're not really going to get much into that. We're just going to use, I put, instead of subject, I should have put noun versus pronoun. So like noun and pronoun get lumped into the subject. Lots of different things can take the place of the object. But anyway, so yeah, this isn't the best chart. In fact, I'll probably go ahead and edit that and just put in the ones that we're actually going to use. Preposition, adjective. Yeah, in fact, now that I've shortened this up a little bit, I might even want to combine adverbs and adjectives just to say modifiers, right? So these are modifying phrase, but I think we'll keep it separate for now. So when we talk about parts of speech, I'll pull this back up and we'll refer to this fairly often as we go. Okay, so let's see. Maybe Professor Craig Light. Well, is that because I'm wearing a hoodie? Professors wear hoodies too, okay? All right, back off my hoodie. Okay, so let's do the first one. Okay, let's bring up something very, very basic. Okay, so this is just a line that Pippin speaks in the Fellowship of the Ring. That sounds like a bit of old Bilbo's rhyming. Okay, so this is from chapter 3. And we're going to compare this with another line that comes in, just in the next paragraph, actually. You guys remember here, let me pull up the page, actually, so I can make sure I'm speaking to the right thing. It's the road goes ever on and on. It's the walking song that Bilbo wrote, and that there are, I think, 3 different versions of. I think it's 3, it might be 4. I think it's 3 different versions of in the book. Anyway, so that's what this is referring to. So Frodo recites "The road goes ever on," and then Pippin says, "That sounds like a bit of old Bilbo's rhyming." Okay, so very, very simple sentence. In fact, this is structurally about as simple as it gets. Let's see. So that sounds like a bit of old Bilbo's rhyming. Okay, yes, and it can get more complex if we want to like really break down the second half of that. But that is our subject, sounds is our verb, and then like a bit of old Bilbo's rhyming is our we call it an adjective, or sorry, it's like a modified phrase. So if we go back to our list here, got like a prepositional phrase. It sounds like this, that, and the other, right? Am I doing this right? So you guys, you're welcome to correct me. Go ahead. It's been years and years since I actually diagrammed sentences in a serious way, so it's been a bit. Casual dress Friday. That's exactly right. Exactly. Okay, so that's our basically S. If we want to get into it, let's create a little banner here that we can use. And we'll call it SVO. SVO. Well, I mean, yeah, technically it's going to be like SVP, I think. But like an SVO, subject, verb, object. That's the most basic type of sentence that you can have. All right. So now, now let's do a different one. This is from the next paragraph, and Frodo's responding to Pippin. He says, he used often to say there was only one road. Okay, now we're getting a little bit weird because our subject is he, referring to Bilbo. He used to say. That's our verb, right? So used to say is, right, we've got 2 verbs giving us a specific type of tense here, and we're not going to get into like all the different verb tenses and whatnot, but he used to say. But then we have an often in there. Now, if you're just speaking, and this goes for, 75 years ago as well, or 100 years ago, whatever, it would be more common to say, he often used to say, or, he used to say often there was only one road, whatever. But in here, we're splitting our kind of verb tense thing with an adverb right in the middle. So it's kind of an odd construction. Now, the reason I bring this up is because this is something that Tolkien does really well, and he does it often, which is to create characterization through language, basically, like through the way that these characters speak. And most authors, especially competent ones, they're going to be able to do this to some degree. Tolkien knew this stuff better than most, right? But yeah, we have a situation here where Frodo creates a little bit of a more complex sentence. The register of this sentence is a little higher. Now, so we would call it, Frodo sounds a little more high class than Pippin, who just speaks in a regular subject, verb, object way, right? That sounds like whatever. Okay. Now, let's see. I want to make sure I don't miss what you guys are saying. This is such a nerdy live stream. I was looking around for topics. I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to talk about? And I was like, you know what? Because I am going to make a video about this, so it'll be a little more concise. Maybe I can do it in 8 to 10 minutes and actually and make it efficient. But I was like, you know what? No, it'd be fun to do a live stream like this. At least I think so. And the thing is, like, if I'm not having fun, nobody else will either. And so I got to start with what I enjoy, right? Okay, so let's move on further in the book now, and I'm gonna take a little some breaks now and then to do some typing. Um, but that's just to give you an idea. These sentences are just to give you an idea of um, how simple these things are at the beginning of the book. And this is not let's see, this is not irregular. Let's see, I'm looking for other examples, but basically, the more you're with the hobbits, the more you're going to get this kind of sentence. But then also, even in the Fellowship of the Ring with various characters like Frodo, Frodo is going to have slightly more complex sentences, kind of, again, giving him that higher register as he speaks. But so will the elves, like when they're still in the Shire and they come across Gildor and his band of elves going to the Grey Havens. The elves speak in a much higher register than the hobbits do, and it's somewhat, or I should say, largely communicated through that sentence structure. I mean, we can get into vocabulary. I'm just not sure I'm totally prepared to do that today. Hell, I'm not prepared to do everything we're doing here today, but at least I can run with this. Let's see. Yeah, here's a great sentence from Pippin, from A Shortcut to Mushrooms. Here's my, I've shown you guys this, my copy of Lord of the Rings that's color-coded, so that I can really quickly see who is speaking when. Every line of dialogue is marked in colored pencil. So, Pippin says, "I will follow you into every bog and ditch." Let's see. Here's another great one from Frodo in the very next paragraph. Frodo says, "That settles it. Shortcuts make delays, but inns make longer ones. At all costs, we must keep you away from the golden perch." Kind of joking around with Pippin. At all costs is a prepositional phrase. Okay, so we go at all. We must at all costs. I think. Yeah. Shoot. Anyway, but putting that at the beginning of the sentence means that we start with our preposition and then we go subject, verb, object. Let's see. We must keep you away. Yeah. Or sorry. Yeah, at all costs. Would that be an adverbial phrase? It's been way too long, you guys. Way too long. All right. Let's see what else we got. You study Lord of the Rings like people study the Bible. Not quite, but something like that. How long did that take you? I assume you mean the color coding. I did this when I was 18. It was my freshman year of college, and it took me, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, somewhere in there. I remember sitting at my kitchen table in my apartment and doing this, but I don't remember for how long. I remember it was a long time. But part of the reason I did it was so that I would slow down and actually read, a little more closely. Okay. There we go. All right. So I have too many other books to read. There are different styles, Cody. This makes you want to read the book again. That's great. I'm more of a rereader and deep reader. If I find something like The Lord of the Rings that I really latch onto, I prefer to stick with it, come back to it, really try to study it. Others prefer to read widely, read as many things as possible. Totally valid. I think either approach is valid. And so, if it weren't for the podcast, I probably would have read The Lord of the Rings a lot more than I have in the last decade. But anyway, I'll read Craig's personal edition with all his notes. Well, here it is. Okay. In fact, I'm going to get rid of this dust jacket so I can actually deal with this a little better. Okay. So let's we've got a few examples. I want to see if I can find some other characters. Let's see. Yes, here's Sam. We had better be going on. Yeah, pretty simple subject verb object. Not a lot of where's Mary? Mary left for a while. I was beginning to wonder, said Mary. Who did you think it was? Said Mary, etc., etc. Okay, so what we're doing here is again just trying to establish that in the first part of the book, things are fairly simple. Things are pretty straightforward. Now let's go a little further, a lot further, really, into the book. Let's go to the Return of the King. Okay, now I am going to. I am going to create another one of these. Okay, so this is the Return of the King. Let's see, Minas Tirith is chapter 1. Okay. We're going to go Return of the King, chapter 1, and this is Pippin again. Okay. And we're going to find, where is the, okay. And I'm just going to type this out so you guys can actually see what I'm looking at. Hopefully I don't misspell anything or typo anything. There we go. I think that should do it. Okay, that'll work. Great. Okay, so we're going to add this one on. So pay attention to this this phrasing right here. That sounds like a bit of old Bilbo's rhyming. Pippin is talking to his friend, Frodo, another hobbit. Things are extremely casual. Now, let's go to Return of the King, chapter 1. Pippin is talking to Denethor and is pledging himself to Denethor's service. And he says right here, little service, no doubt, will so great a lord of men think to find in a hobbit. Wow, is this the same guy? Holy smokes. This is bananas. So this is Pippin again. Now compare again. And this is, I kind of just picked this phrase out randomly. You can go back to the Fellowship of the Ring and find all the things that Pippin says, and they're all this kind of simple structure. Now suddenly we get to the Return of the King, and the same character is, he has a sentence, and it goes on, by the way. The sentence gets more complex. We're just using the first part of this. Little service, no doubt, will so great a lord of men think to find in a hobbit. My word. Okay, so the first one we had was kind of a subject, verb, object. Let's see. Oh, somebody's texting me. Make sure it's not my wife. Just got to make sure there's nothing going on. Okay, cool. So that was a very, very simple subject, verb, object. Now, this one is here. Let's do this one. This one is, in fact, you know, let's just add it to that one. I'll add this. SVA. There we go. Okay, now I can show you this. Okay, so right down there, OSVA. What does that mean? Object, subject, verb, adverbial, right? Okay, so if we look at it, little service, no doubt. Will. Oh, you know, I think I even messed this one up. So let's we can adjust that just a little bit. Object, verb, subject. There it's crazy. Diagramming sentences, and I know that smarter people out there could do it better and faster than me. That's fine. Okay, so little service is our object. Okay, why is that? Well, let's see. Where's our subject is so great a lord of men. Okay, woof. So now we have our adjective preceding our subject, right? So great a lord of men. So the lord of men is our subject. The verb is will. Okay, so right there, the verb is will. So lord of men will find. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Well, yeah. Will find again. Splitting up our verbs. Typically we put them together so that it's easier to understand what tense we're speaking in. But now we're splitting it up with the subject. And then let's see, this Lord of Men, so great a Lord of Men, will think to find, okay, little service. That's our object. In a hobbit is our adverbial phrase, prepositional phrase is what I meant to say. So that should be a P and not an A. In a hobbit. So yeah, let's gosh, you can see how much I'm struggling since it's been so long. Okay, so O-V-S-P, and even that doesn't, like, if you were to diagram this sentence out, it would be a whole giant mess, right? Okay, so now that we've got this example, it's pretty clear what Tolkien is doing if we compare Pippin in Fellowship of the Ring versus Pippin here. And the thing is, as we go, it's not like it's not a clean chronological thing, right? As we move through the Return of the King, it's not like, okay, this is now how Pippin talks. No, it's how he's talking to certain characters. And we can see this as well with Merry as he's talking to Theoden. Merry goes through a similar linguistic change. All right. So in fact, I don't know if do I have Merry pulled up here? I might not have marked him down. Let me see. Maybe I did. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah, this is a great one, actually. Okay, so I'm gonna pop in here, and we're going to create a new banner. This will be, I think this is, chapter 2, The Passing of the Grey Company. And so this is Merry talking to Theoden. And let's go ahead and type this one out. I know, riveting live stream stuff, but I want to make sure that you guys have a chance to actually see what I'm talking about. Okay. So let's figure out what this one's going to be. All right. So in the next chapter, Merry says to Theoden, okay, so again, a king, obviously Theoden is a steward, but for all intents and purposes, they're both talking to kings. And Merry says, as a father, you shall be to me. This is much simpler than Pippin's sentence, but as a father is our, would this be our adverbial phrase because it's shall? No, it would be a prepositional phrase. You shall be to me. You shall be as a father to me would be like maybe the normal construction of that, but he just flips this order around so that we're looking at adverbial. I think it is no, you shall be as a father to me. Adverbial, subject, verb. You shall be as a father to me. To me would be the prepositional phrase. There you go. All right. Again, been way too long. Okay. So anyway, I guess again, just kind of point being what I mentioned earlier. These characters, as they talk to different characters, they change their register, right? So this is not how Merry talks to other hobbits, especially at the beginning. Okay, so let's go to, let's see, we're in the Siege of Gondor. Okay, now we get, let's do some dialogue. Okay, so we'll go to, let's see, the Siege of Gondor is at chapter 3? No. Maybe? Chapter 4, Siege of Gondor. Okay. This is when the Lord of the Nazgul show up, and then the horns blow in the background. It's pretty great. Okay. Okay. This'll work. Okay. So now we've got the cock crowing in the background. Let's see. So yeah, this is when the Witch King shows up at the gates. And then Gandalf stands alone against him, and old fool, this is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it? Die now and curse in vain. With that, he lifted high his sword. Again, okay, so now this isn't dialogue. He said, Tolkien wrote, with that, he lifted high his sword. So we have the adverb coming before, or let's see, lifted high. Yeah, verb, adverb, object. Lifted high his sword, where normally we would put the object first. He lifted his sword high. Yeah, we would change that around a little bit. And then now we could talk about what's the word I'm looking for? Vocabulary, right? Recking nothing of wizardry or war. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Gandalf did not move. In that very moment, away behind in some courtyard of the city, a cock crowed. Shrill and clear he crowed, recking nothing of wizardry or war. We'll stop there. Shrill and clear he crowed. All right, so now we have our subject, verb, and then adverb, right? He crowed, shrill and clear. Recking nothing of wizardry or war. That one's a little more, well, it's just the word choice. Yeah, now we're not getting into word order so much as word choice. Recking, meaning understanding or grokking or comprehending or whatever. Think of the word reckon. So recking nothing of wizardry or war. I don't care about that. Whatever. Anyway, so even in the non-dialogue, Tolkien goes, from the very, very simple constructions that he uses in the Fellowship of the Ring to now much more complex. And he does this intentionally whenever he wants to, again, up that register. In this case, it's not about class per se, the way that it would be with the hobbits. They're speaking more low class versus high class. In this case, it would be, how epic do we want to be? How archaic, how heroic do we want the text to be? So that's the whole purpose of something like this. Okay. So let's see. Can we get one more example? I don't know if let's, nah, I think we'll just leave that there. We've again, I'll do an actual video on this. I'll dig in a little bit deeper and, organize my thoughts so that it doesn't take a half hour. It'll take, 8 or 10 minutes, and I'll do a little more concise version of this. But okay, so our question here is, does it get more difficult as it goes on? It depends, I guess. It depends on what your tastes are and what your skill level is, I guess, in reading. I think, so the question, actually, let me pull up the question and make sure that I do it justice here. Okay. So the question from Nick England, is there a noticeable difficulty spike in language in the Return of the King? Uh, 3. I think I got that right. Okay, cool. So here's our actual question: is there a noticeable difficulty spike in language in the Return of the King? Again, I think it's going to go to your tastes. I don't find the difficulty to spike, but it could just be because I've read it so many times, because I'm used to it, because I spent some time in college reading Middle English and Old English texts. So maybe it's just exposure that I like. It doesn't make it more difficult for me. In fact, I think in some ways it's harder to read the Fellowship of the Ring because, like I've brought up a lot of times, there's the W.H. Auden quote that light comedy is not Mr. Tolkien's forte. I gotta find that quote again somewhere. And so in some ways for me, it's more difficult to read like the the Tom Bombadil chapters, or some of the Shire chapters, because it's like, this isn't what you're best at, and it kind of shows. And then when you get to parts of the Two Towers, and especially you get into the early parts of the Return of the King, and that epicness, that heroic nature of the text elevates a lot. And that is his strength. That's what I think he's absolutely best at. And so for me, it's easier to read because it feels like Tolkien is more comfortable, and therefore I'm more comfortable. Anyway, it's hard to say for sure, but it's a great question. I think it's a really great question. Okay, this is a good question. Thanks, Morgan. I got a question. What level is The Lord of the Rings as for reading? Is it a college level, or is it more for junior high and high school level? It's going to definitely depend on the person. And things have changed a lot. Like, you could, when this was published, when The Lord of the Rings was published in 1954, you could pretty easily hand it to a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, whatever, and say, hey, here's this book, I think you'd like it. And now that wouldn't quite be the case. Again, depending on the reader, there are going to be some 10 and 12-year-olds out there who you can hand The Lord of the Rings and they're going to eat it up, right? But I think we've simplified things for younger ages to a certain degree. And this is not me saying, things were so much better back in the day. This comes with drawbacks, but it also comes with benefits, right? So I'm not trying to say that. But what level is it now? Yeah, I'd say it's The Lord of the Rings is more like probably late high school on average, if that's fair. But again, it's so dependent on the actual person and how much, what types of things they've read. If you could have somebody who reads a ton, but if what they're reading is, Dave Pilkey books or something, then they're not exactly training for this sort of thing. Let's see. Cody says, yeah, my son had read it and he just turned 11. I read it around the same age. Did he or I comprehend everything? No, but that's the fun of it. It increases the likelihood of rereading it. For some people, I think some personality types relish that challenge. Others, they don't. There's some personality types that prefer comfort, comfort and ease. And so if they come across something that is really, really difficult for them, then they're like, hey, I'm out. I'm not going to do this anymore. And they go off and do something else, which, again, I'm not trying to say that one way is better or worse. I think comfort is a good thing, but I'm the type. I was definitely the type when I was 17 and read, I think it was 16, 17, whatever I was when I read the Silmarillion for the first time. I had no idea what I had read. I had to reread it, but I relished the challenge, and so I think I'm with you and your son. I didn't read The Lord of the Rings when I was 11. The first like big kid book. It was actually an adult book. I probably should not have read it, but my mom handed me Sphere by Michael Crichton when I was 9 years old. And said, give this a shot. And, kind of like you're saying, did I comprehend everything? No, I didn't. But I certainly knew what was going on. It blew my mind and all that stuff. And then after I was done with that, I went and read The Sword of Shannara, which was probably a little more appropriate for a 9-year-old. But yeah, that was a similar thing. I didn't know enough to comprehend, or to analyze the structure of the book, or, this part is ripping off Tolkien. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just had a good time with it. So, Craig, we need you to take a side. That's the internet talking, Josh. You don't need me to take a side. I know what side I'm on, and I know what side I prefer. But part of my maturing process has been to realize that my way isn't always the best way, even objectively, or even subjectively, right? Sometimes my way isn't the best for me, even, and I should open my mind up to other things. Um, there's also the style issue that kids might find difficult. Yeah, I mean that's gonna be inevitable, right? If you hand somebody, well, no, that's I was gonna say the Three Musketeers because there's a new version of that coming out next year. Whoo, out of France. Um, but whatever, we'll go with it. If you hand somebody the Three Musketeers, it's written in such an archaic style. It's a bad example because you can translate it, various ways, but it's written in such an archaic style that it is going to be somewhat foreign to a modern audience, and that's uh, I want to say that's becoming true of the Lord of the Rings. But the thing is, even when Tolkien published the Lord of the Rings back in the 50s, it wasn't as removed as it is now, but he was writing in an archaic style. He did it with The Hobbit. He did it with the Lord of the Rings. He deliberately archaicized things. I'm pretty sure that's a word. So, but no, it's a good point. The style is it's not the style now, is it? Chronicles of Prydain was my gateway to Tolkien. I also read Sphere when I was 10, 11. Shouldn't have either. Moved on to Stephen King. I'm pretty sure I've told the story of Stephen King. Yeah, Stephen King is not for kids. I mean, depending on the book, but for the most part. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I've told the story about one Christmas, my brother had been assigned to me to get a gift, and I had read a bunch of Michael Crichton stuff. I think I was like 13 at the time, and I'd read through a bunch of Michael Crichton, and so he found a Michael Crichton book that he knew I hadn't read. He hadn't read it either, but he's like, hey, it's Michael Crichton. He loves Michael Crichton, and my gift that year was Disclosure, and boy, did I get an education reading that at 13 years old. Okay. There wasn't a lot of YA middle grade literature available when I was a kid in the 90s. Hey, that's actually a good point. I wonder, it's in a way, it's tempting to be frustrated these days with the proliferation of YA middle grade stuff. If you're an adult and you would prefer more adult stuff, everything's YA now. I get that temptation, but it's also a really, really nice thing that there are more kind of like stepping stones for kids to gradually increase their reading comprehension levels, whatever we want to call them. The only trick is not to get stuck on one of them, right? And so you keep progressing. And then the other trick, of course, is that as you progress, as you go down those that road and you progress on those stepping stones, is to then not look back at the previous stones that you used to be on and look down your nose at them, right? Because they're like YA stuff or middle grade stuff or children's stuff can be extremely valuable, as we've talked about quite a bit on the podcast. So, okay. I can always go back to Roku. Not on this channel, I can't. Same thing with Mr. Poe. Edgar Allan Poe, I assume you mean. Did I ever tell the story of my best English class ever? At least in high school, like junior high school. It was 10th grade, and I failed my first term of English. There's some stories that go along with that. I hated the teacher. She hated me back. We fought like cats and dogs. And as a consequence, I failed my first term of English. And so I had to do night school to make it up. And so I think it was like 8 weeks. Wednesday nights I would go to the alternative high school. And so it was me and like a bunch of burnouts and just you can imagine the crowd. Maybe somebody who is a few years older and trying to get their GED, whatever. And so it was like me and this, and I was like this really straight-laced, buttoned up, normal high school kid. And it was the best English class I ever took. Everybody in the class was 5, 10 times as engaged as in any of my regular classes. The discussions were amazing. The teacher was great. And we spent 8 weeks reading and discussing Edgar Allan Poe. Best English class I ever had. So, unintended consequences. I failed English, got some good English. Okay. Let's, okay. Go back here. Hide that. There we go. Okay, so yeah, if do you guys have anything else that you want to bring up, or shall we call it there? It's a little bit shorter live stream, but I'm solo parenting today, and I don't want to leave the kids in the house for too long while I'm out here in the studio with you yahoos. So if you have any other questions, any other comments that you want me to bring up, I'll give you another minute to do so. But again, with our, I'll go ahead and throw it back up here. With this subject, I am going to do a video on this. I will make it more efficient, comprehensible, whatever. And, you know, maybe you'll even get some more glimpses into my personal copy of Lord of the Rings. So, okay. Anyway, all right, everybody. And now I've got this to put away. All right, Lady Sweden, have a good day and a good night for you, especially. Enjoy yourselves. Have a safe weekend. And yeah, 16 days to Christmas. Go get those gifts, including, you know, signing up to be a patron of the Legendarium. All right, have a good one, everybody. I'll see you next time.